One of the things I want to start doing is I want to start talking to you about how to actually compose music. It's great that we're learning all the music theory from the Western Music Theory playlist, but I also want to talk a little bit about how composers actually put music together. So today we're going to be talking about a technique that I like to call the melodic skeleton. It's essentially where you take a melody and you break it down to its core parts so that you can extract harmony from the melody. And by doing this, you get a melody and harmony that work together. So I'm going to show you how to do this step by step. The first thing you may do when composing a piece is you may think up a chord progression. So this is a pretty standard chord progression. If you analyze this would be a 1 chord. Here you have a 4 chord. Here you have a 2 chord. Then you get a 5 chord and it comes back to 1. It's nothing fancy. What you could do is, using your ear, you could use voice leading to create your own chord progressions. Think about each individual voice as its own part. So here we have a soprano part. It moves up by step, stays the same, moves up by step, skips down a third. Here's your second part. It moves up by step, stays the same, up by step, and then down again. So you can think of this as 3 different parts, contrapuntally, that work together. So we're going to listen to this chord progression, and then I'm going to show you how you can actually create a melody based on this particular chord progression. Pretty standard progression, nothing real special about it. So what we've done here is we have taken the chords and we've created our first melodic skeleton. If you notice, all the notes in the melody, they fit the harmony. There is nothing outside the harmony. So here we have the notes C, E, and G. Here we have a C, E, G, and C. Here we have an F, A, and C. So we've got an A, C, A, and F. Here we've got our D, F, A. So we've got D, F, A, and then a repeat of the F. And here we have a G, B, and a D. So you got your G, your B, and your D. So this melody truly comes out of the harmony now. And the harmony implies the melody. These two systems now, you've got your melody and your harmony, they are functioning as a cohesive whole. And you almost can't separate them from each other because they belong to each other. The melody came from the harmony, and the harmony could be implied by the melody. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this, and then I'm going to show you sort of the next step. So the melody was okay. It fits the harmony, it has a sense of progression, and it feels like it comes to an end here. We don't really have a high point, but this C is sort of our high point, and it sounds like a complete melody with a harmonic progression that makes sense below it. So now what we can do is we still keep our skeleton. You'll notice your C, E, G, and your C. Here's your A, C, A, F. It's the same skeleton. We're still, for the most part, keeping all of our consonant intervals, all of our notes that fit with the underlying harmony. We're keeping them on the downbeats. But what we're doing is we're adding non-chord tones. So we added this D. That D creates some dissonance that takes us from that C into that E more forcefully. It pushes us forward because this is dissonant with the harmony and we want to resolve it to a harmonic tone. Here we've got a B. Doesn't fit the harmony, so it pushes us into the next note. Same here. Pushes us into the next note. All these non-chord tones, they create this need to resolve. And all we've done is just use that initial skeleton and created this ebb and flow between consonance and dissonance. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this real quick. Sounds like a nice complete melody, and all we did was use the harmony. So depending on how complex your harmony is, your melody can also be more complex. So this is a very simple melody because I'm trying to illustrate a point. But let me show you one other thing. Here you have this eighth note figure. You could call it a motive. It's very unique to the piece, and then it comes back again here. When you have these motives that come back at key points in the piece, it helps to create more melodic unity. So we've got this eighth note motive here, followed by a quarter and 2/8. Here we've got something very similar. We've got our 4 eighth notes, here's 2 quarters, and then that eighth note resolution is delayed until we get this scalar figure. So let's look at one more thing. This is exactly the same. The only thing we've changed is the end. So that scalar motion was a little bit boring, so all I did was I just created a little bit more dissonance by reversing the order of some of the notes. And you could do this throughout the entire melody. As long as your downbeats and your really strong beats, beat 1 for the most part, match with the harmony, and then the rest of it is built on the harmony, it's going to sound okay. So let's go ahead and listen to this one. A little bit more unexpected. It just adds a little more flavor to it. And then you can even make this a G sharp, an F sharp. You can make this a D flat. You can start to play in the key of C, not C major or C minor, but in the key of C. And you can make your melody a little more interesting. So we're going to show you one more thing you can do now. So now that I have my melody, maybe I want a more interesting bass line than just a bunch of harmonies. So I did the same thing as I did with the melody. I just took apart my bass line, I added a few passing tones, but I used the basic structure of the bass, and I created a counter melody to my melody. But notice, the bass stays the same when the melody moves. And then when the melody moves, the bass moves. So we have this constant motion between the two parts, but for the most part, if the melody here is moving, the bass holds. And what that does is it allows each voice to come out in its own specific area. We can really hear the difference between the melody and the bass because they're never really moving at the same time. This is a great example here because it's held over while the melody line is doing its own thing up here. So this difference in rhythm is really important to keeping the composition very fluid. So let's listen to this one. And I like to use a lot of contrary motion. Notice this is coming down from the G to the C. This is going up from the G to the C. That contrary motion helps to create even more independence between those lines. So here we have an actual piece from the literature. This is a Schumann piece. And this is our initial melody. So from this melody, we're not going to find the actual chord progression he used, but we can imply a very clear chord progression. So let's just listen to the melody first. So when you're trying to work backwards from the melody, your downbeats are going to be very important cues. Other strong beats are going to be important places to look. Here's a downbeat. This is a pretty strong beat. Downbeat, pretty strong beat. So we're looking for our downbeats, and then we're trying to identify everything else as sort of a non-chord tone. Either something that passes through or acts like a neighbor where it comes up and comes back down. So let's go ahead and look at how we can take this apart. So we've got a G in the first measure, so I just put a G here. This is some sort of maybe E flat harmony or G harmony, but it has a note G in it. That's all we know. Here we've got a G, a B flat, E, and a G. So I just broke this up into 4 quarter notes, and it looks like we have an E flat, a G, and a B flat for the harmony in the first measure. So an E flat major chord. Here we've got a C and an E flat. So maybe this is some harmony that includes a C and an E flat in it, and the D and the F would be considered non-chord tones. Here we have another G and a B flat, so I put a G and a B flat in the lower part. This is just sort of my sketch so I can figure out what the actual harmony is. This A natural doesn't fit the key at all, so this is definitely, most likely, a non-chord tone. We're going to at least treat it that way for our purposes. And then we come back to an A flat. So the last harmony should have an A flat in it. So if we were to take this and turn it into a chord progression, using that G, I put it in the middle. I know I'm in the key of E flat, so I'm going to make this a 1 chord, because starting on that 1 chord is going to be pretty powerful. Here, that 1 chord is pretty clearly outlined, so I keep it. Now I have my C and my E, so I've got a C and E flat, and I went ahead and made this a G, so I now have another chord for this measure. Here I've got a G and a B flat, so here's your G, B flat, and I just added a D. You could have maybe made this into an E flat major chord. The selections I chose, it's not guaranteed that that's what Schumann wanted, but the melody does imply that you at least have a C and an E flat. So any chord you can build with a C or an E flat in it could potentially work, and then you just have to use your ears to hear what sounds good. And then here we've got an A flat. It could be an A flat chord, or it could be this F chord here. It's hard to say, so I put both of them in there. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this so that you can see what Schumann has done here. And this is not the actual chord progression. This is just one possible implied progression. So you might experiment with different chords until you find one that you actually like. Now you can do this with just about any melody you find. The genre doesn't matter. If it's somewhat melodic, somewhat tonal, you can imply a harmony based on how the melody's set up. You could do this with popular songs. You could do this with rap music. You could do it with anything. As long as it has some sort of a tonal basis, you can imply a harmony. So hopefully this helped you. You can start to maybe see how you can enhance your own compositions and make that melody more connected to the harmony. Because a lot of times what I see with young composers is they get this great melody and then they try and write a harmony, and the harmony doesn't make any sense with the melody. Well, this is how you make that harmony make sense with the melody.